All right, all right. Welcome back to Hear Me Out. It's just a thought. Today, I want to talk about remarriage and grief. And I want to talk about it because there's a couple of situations that are calling my attention online, and I want to hear your thoughts about it. Long time no talk. I had lost my voice, but now it's back. Last time I put something out, it was about Halloween and talking about the Halloween dilemma. You may or may not have followed that, and then I just went silent. And so now it's back. So I'm back bothering you with my thoughts. So, what happened? Well, I was online yesterday and I saw the Congressman Thomas Massie trending about his remarriage to a new person after the passing of his 30-year married wife with him. And people were having nasty comments to put out, and I was pretty surprised at the comments given the context of the remarriage. And so I want to know if you agree, if you disagree, if you've heard about it. This also goes with how people are commenting on Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, and how she's grieving or not grieving enough. All of that. It kind of called my attention because I have thoughts. And so you, of course, have thoughts. I want to hear what you think. So yeah, I'll talk about the cultural view of marriage, the political view of marriage. I'll check on what the Bible actually teaches. And of course, I will insert my own 2 cents. So you know what? Hear me out. It's all just a thought. All right. So if it is your very first time here, welcome. I'm happy you stopped by. My name is Gigi, and on this channel, I like to talk about everything that's trending. I like to look at what culture teaches us, and what faith teaches us, and how do we navigate both. So culture, faith, everything in between. Sometimes I just look at whatever is being talked about online, and I try to learn lessons from it. I just want to grow with you and hear from you and learn from you. And so on this topic of marriage/remarriage, I want to hear your thoughts. So if that sounds good to you, you should definitely hit the subscribe button so we can stick together. And now let's go. So you may or may not have heard of Congressman Thomas Massie. He's well known in the United States. And of course, he's a politician. He's known for other things than being married or not married. But last year, if I remember correctly, was it in last year or was it before? I know that his wife passed. I believe it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong on this. But his wife recently passed away. They were married 30 years. And I remember that she was, I think, his high school sweetheart, if I remember correctly. And people were very much, of course, saddened for him, praying for him, supporting him through it all. And now he has come out this week and announced that he got married to another woman. And of course, just because the situation calls for controversy, she happens to be younger, very much younger than him. I think 20 years separate the two. And so as you can imagine, following, I talked about it in the past. I made an episode about an African pastor called Marcelo Tunasi, who had remarried 1 year exactly after his late wife, had passed. People had opinions. This is the same for Thomas Massie, and people also have opinions. The difference, if you missed that first episode, go and listen to it. I was criticizing the way he went about it, but the difference with this story here, and the reason I'm bringing it to our attention on this channel, is I'm disagreeing with how people are going about it, commenting and what they're saying in their comments. Some comments are proposing to be Christian comments and Christian points of views. I beg to differ. I will want to know what you think. But essentially, people had thoughts. The internet had thoughts. Some people, yes, cheered and wished him the best, and others said that he moved on way too fast, or, hear me out, they said he should not have remarried at all, and that if it was to happen to them, they will or would not remarry at all, given that, they love their wives so much and they're Christians and all of that. My initial reaction was, what do you mean? Because what? And so the reason I'm bringing it to the channel, of course, is I want to warn everybody that I can and warn myself as I'm growing older. I'm not old, okay? I'm not old, but I'm growing older and wiser. I tend to realize that we're so quick to speak sometimes, and we're so quick to project ourselves and imagine what we would do on things that we don't know anything about sometimes. And we tend to forget that we're human beings. We tend to forget that there's a good God that has created us, that has already kind of told us what can, would, should happen and how to live our lives. And sometimes we take on and we go to the internet and we spew some opinions and we leave thinking we did something good. But really, we're kind of being messy, guys. We're being messy. And that's what I want to talk about, because the goal here is always to learn, is always to grow wiser, and it's to just be careful with what we say. And so Thomas Massie had a wife for 30 years. That already, in my opinion, says something. If you have a 30-year marriage, that already says something to me. No marriage, of course, is perfect. No one individual is perfect, but it is a respectable thing. He is, in my view, a respectable man at first kind of view when I think, hey, you've had a 30-year marriage all the way until your wife passed. And so the comments that came in kind of seemed to undermine that, or at least some people were disgusted by how fast, I guess, he was moving on. That's okay. But how the fact that he was just moving on point blank, some people were disgusted by it, as if he shouldn't have moved on or he shouldn't have remarried at all. Other people were commenting, of course, on the fact that she's very young. And so I wanna dig into that, and I wanna kind of talk about what I see being wrong here in how people are reacting. And of course, I want to call it out in ourselves, because we can all, fall into that temptation of being too quick to comment. So the first thing to consider is, again, I think he's 50 something years old. He's not super, super old. He's 50, let me check. He's 54 years old, and he got remarried. And the thing is that when you are, of course, a public figure, I would call it, or even a pastor, like I was doing the example of Pastor Marcelo Tunasi. When you're a public figure, fortunately or unfortunately, your whole life is on display. You become this, of course, symbol, if you want to call it that, or people look to you, people look at you, and your private choices will become public ammunition sometimes. And this is what I feel like is happening to Congressman Massie. The fact is, though, and I want to call it out, that disagreeing with someone's policies is not the same as judging their grief. It's not the same as understanding whatever they're going through. And it seems like some specific accounts, it was mostly men, by the way, mostly men, mostly self-proclaimed Christian men, like The Art of Purpose, for example. I saw that. And they were commenting under Thomas Massie's post announcing his marriage to, I can't remember the wife's name, saying, I would never, ever remarry if my wife was to pass after 30 years of marriage, or there's just only one wife. And people chimed in talking about their religious beliefs, but claiming Christianity, of course. And I was shocked. I was shooketh, because I didn't understand what necessarily was where it came from, this whole thing of like, I would never get remarried because I'm a Christian, where it came from. And I'm interested in it because, like I said, sometimes we get lied to by the culture, and sometimes we can get lied to by even the religious trends that come on, and it's false doctrine. It's not just untrue. And this is the case when it comes to remarriage. And so on one side, we have culture, and we can be tempted to say, you know what, culture teaches us that we can marry 75 people in the course of, 5 years. We don't have to be in any kind of covenant. We don't have to even be married. We can just live together as boyfriend and girlfriend forever. Marriage is just about love. When you don't love a person anymore, you could just move on. So the culture teaches us to be unserious with marriage. And so we as Christians, we're going to be very, very serious. We're going to take it so serious that, oh man, if unfortunately our husband or our wife passes, we will never remarry because it's a covenant. And it could make sense. Sure, it could make sense. But I just want to call out the fact that it's just not wise, in my opinion, to adopt that position as an absolute. And also it's not wise to tell other people who are remarrying that they're wrong, and it's just not safe. Hear me out. Just stay with me. I'll explain why. The fact is, like I said, he's been married for 30 years and now he's remarried. And in all cases, when it comes to, for example, Pastor Marcelo to Massie, even when it comes to Erica Kirk, I've seen people commenting on how long or how short her grief is or whatever it is. And now Congressman Massie, I want to just drill that we can judge too quickly and way too loudly, especially online. And it feels good to be certain. Yeah, for sure. Social media rewards outrage, and sometimes we can mistake our opinion for moral truth. Literally, we will mistake our opinion for moral truth. The problem is when we rush to condemn, it is dangerous and it wounds real people with real feelings who are already hurting if they're normal human beings. And the Bible actually warns us about a lot of this in many, many places. So I want to just first go there before I give you my personal opinion. Remember how people use Matthew 7 and kind of misquote it or misuse it to say never ever judge, never have opinions, never call out sin, never do nothing. And they just they kind of justify sin with Matthew 7. Well, that's not what we're going to do here. But Matthew 7 does exist. Matthew 7 just teaches us before we kind of go and judge everyone else, before we look at what everyone else is doing, we should take care of what's wrong with us. We should look in the mirror. We should kind of know that the same way we're judging others is the same way we're going to be judged. And when it comes to losing somebody, like having somebody pass, and when it comes to falling in love, when it comes to being married, no two people are the same, is what I'm trying to say. No two people are the same. And it's a weird thing to pretend that we know exactly what's happening in the lives of people who we don't really know, who are online, and we see some highlights of their lives, but that's it. Or we know them from whatever trade they do, whatever their job is. We forget that we don't actually know. And so before we go and judge them, we kind of forget that the Bible teaches us, hey, kind of look at what's in front of you here. Look at your own lives. And Jesus warns us because he tells us that if we're pointing fingers, we need to check our hands first. And I think that's very brutally practical, actually. We're often quicker to see the wound in someone else than the splinter that is in our own eye. And the Bible goes to teach us even more things that are wise, in my opinion. James teaches us, hey, that everyone should be quick to listen first, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And Proverbs teaches us that answering before listening is foolish. Yes, nobody's answering before listening in this example, but it seems like they're just commenting before actually thinking about it. And we can also be guilty of that sometimes. And so my point here is that the Bible warns us on being very loud to comment on other people's situations, very loud, very quick to be angry and call out someone else. And it can be unwise, yes, but also dangerous. So before we post, before we retweet or tweet, before we shout out, our hot take from the rooftops, we need to ask ourselves, are we helping anyone at all? Are we talking, are we saying something that is true and good, or are we just in the moment of our feelings and we're just kind of, saying things? And on the question of remarriage after someone passes, I actually tend to disagree altogether. Although I realize emotionally it's complicated. Of course, we're like, what about your wife, Thomas Massie? 30 years. How can we forget about her? I love my spouse so much. I can never even imagine being with somebody else. And it feels right. It feels good. It feels normal. My only warning is sometimes we have plans and good intentions, and we forget that when things actually happen, we won't be sure how we will feel then, right? And scripture says about remarriage after death that it's fine, by the way. And I tend to believe that scripture is true and good. It comes from God. It's there for our edification. It's here to teach us, correct us, instruct us on how to live our lives. And so it's not actually for no reason that it talks about remarriage, because it teaches that we're bound to our husbands, we're bound to our wives as long as they live. But if somebody dies, we are free to marry anyone that we wish. That's in 1 Corinthians in chapter 7. And it just says, but they must belong to the Lord. That is key, right? The key here is that they must belong, or I guess be in the Lord. And we can think about many marriages or remarriages in weird circumstances. I can think of Ruth, not weird, but special circumstances. I can think of Ruth. That is a powerful Old Testament example. She ended up being like part of Jesus's family line. She lost her husband, and she followed her mother-in-law, his mother, and then she found Boaz, and she remarries and she becomes part of God's redemptive story. And so I keep thinking, if somebody had told Ruth, just stay single forever, don't even think about it, things would have been different. And so the Bible actually teaches us that it's fine, that it's okay. It can be even a blessing. We just have to be careful on the reason. Like anything we do in life, I think we have to be careful of why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and who we're doing it with. Are these people in the Lord? Are the person you want to marry or remarry in the Lord or no? Are you healed? Are you not? But remarriage is not an issue per se. Before I go into my personal reflection on it and what I have found to be interesting, I want to hear what you think, because I believe that, of course, I haven't lost a spouse. I hope I don't lose a spouse, at a pretty young age. I feel like 54 is a young age to lose your spouse. But I want to know, if you're somebody who has remarried after you've lost someone, first of all, how did that go? How did it go for you? If you have kids, how did it go for them? Your entourage, how is it now? Is that person that you remarried in the Lord or not? How is it going? And also, I just want to know what you all think about this Thomas Massie situation. Do you agree or disagree? Is it hard for you to to accept that people can just marry really quickly after somebody passes? My personal opinion is yes, it can look a little, heartless. But the fact is, I think that when somebody has been in a relationship for a long time, very long time in his case, I find that if something goes left and people separate, for example, or somebody passes, the people that are used to being in a relationship that is healthy, that is, tend to find another partner quicker, and they want to find another partner quicker. The reason being, if you're in a nice place, you have a nice house, it's clean, it's taken care of, you enjoy it there, and you lose it, you lose your house, maybe you financial reasons, or it burns, or whatever it is, you will tend to miss being in a nice house. You will tend to miss living that life because it was a good life, not just the material part of it, just a good, comfortable, healthy life. And so imagine how much more a good relationship or even a marriage can be tempting to reproduce, not because we're just patching things, but to me, it would make sense that somebody who was in a 30-year marriage, healthy marriage, that they didn't, separate because they were hating each other, but the person just passed. I wouldn't find it weird, and I don't find it weird that the person would want to be in another committed, healthy relationship. I feel like that goes without saying that that's what the person would want. Although you love your wife or husband that has passed, it wouldn't be unusual, in my opinion, to want to now keep having a good marriage or have another good marriage. It's not weird, in my opinion. And I've grown to realize that as I've gotten older. I used to think, it's a forever thing. If somebody passes, we should never, ever just find somebody else. I've grown to realize that actually, when marriage is done right, you want it for everyone else. When you're happy in your marriage, you want everyone else to experience the same thing. And when you lose it, you might want to re-experience that thing, is my opinion. And so I don't think that when the Bible teaches that we were not necessarily meant to be just alone, it is not good for man to be alone. That's in Genesis 2. God created a helper. God created man and woman to be together. I don't find it surprising that we would long for it, because even in culture, even outside of Christianity, outside of being religious, everyone kind of sort of wants companionship. Everybody wants to come home to somebody who's missed them, who does life with them, who builds a family with them, who has purpose, that are in purpose together with them. And it's not something that is stranger to human nature to crave that and to want that. And you don't stop wanting that once somebody passes. You miss the person, you grieve the person, you sometimes are in complete devastation because you have lost your person, but you don't altogether now think that nobody else is worthy or nobody else is able to give you family life or marriage or a covenant, something, I don't think that goes away. And I want to say something else. I think it can protect us. I think if I or you if you're married, when you all of a sudden find yourself without a spouse after so long, it could, not that it will, it could be an open door to sin. Because if you say, I will never marry again because I've lost the person that I've loved, and 1 year passes, 2 year passes, 3 year passes, 5 year passes. The truth, we're all adults here, guys. I'm not sure everybody will be able to not fall into sin, into emotional sin, physical sin, to live a life that is not according to God's will, just because we don't want to marry again. And so I'm not sure that we're meant to be alone. I'm not sure that because we're meant to be alone, it's natural to crave somebody else's presence. And I wouldn't want a Thomas Massie or a you or a me to start living in sin because we said we would never get married again. Whereas our good God has already told us, guys, it's better to kind of bury than to marry than burn. And it's good to be two, and it's good to be in purpose. Make sure that the person you find is in the Lord, of course, emphasis on in the Lord. Make sure you're healed, all of that. But I'm not sure that we are good to just go the rest of our lives. If you lose a husband at 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, to go another 10, 20, 30, 40 years just there, because at some point you could want companionship. And if you go about the wrong way, it could be dangerous. That's what I'm going to say. And so I don't think that it is wise to go on the internet and judge the way another person has decided to go about their lives. Yes, we can express that we're maybe worried that they went too fast. Maybe we're kind of questioning the choice of the person they did it with or they're doing it with. I'm just unsure about the whole remarriage being a problem, because it's not. Culturally, I think it's not at all, but also religiously, I don't think it is. I even tend to think that remarriage can be good when it's done right and when it's done in God's way. I think it's good to be stable. I think it's good to have companionship. I think if you choose the right spouse, a person who loves God and lives by God, it could be good for children to be in a 2-parent household later on, after the grief period has passed. And I've seen both successful people successfully stay single. My father passed when my mother was actually very young, guys. My mom, I think she was married like 3 years. And then she lost her husband, our dad, and she was like, I'm staying single forever. And she did stay single forever. And I know she is alive. She's still living a straight life, if I can call it like that. She's not in sin, but not everybody can do that. So I know of a successful non-remarriage, but I also know of successful remarriages that are healthy, and the kids are happy, they're taken care of, and both parents are good people and stuff like that. So we just need to not shame people for things that God tells us are okay, because God knows what he's doing. God knows his creation. We are the creation. And yeah, so I was just interested in talking about that. Let me know what you think about marriage/remarriage after a loss. I think it is different maybe in the context of divorcing, because we don't like each other no more, like the culture teaches us. And so that's a little special. We already know that God does not like divorce. So it's a different thing than losing a spouse and then having to kind of make a decision of what the rest of your life is going to look like. So that's my 2 cents. Let me know what you think. And because my voice is back, I will also come back more regularly this week and the next. I think I'm going to talk in a couple of days about this video I'm seeing of people saying that to be a conservative is to seek white approval. Sometimes the internet is just weird. So I'm going to talk about that. But for now, let me know what you think about marriage/remarriage. Hit the subscribe button so we can be together. And of course, send this to somebody who needs to hear it or see it. And hit the like button to let me know it has blessed you in any kind of fashion. I will see you next time.